What's good, Top Title Sports? I am Eric Vincent. Thank you for being here. And don't mind this whole thing. I mean, I got to get some real use out of it at this point now. I took it up to Ford Field, tried to blend in with the crowd, mob with the people, blew ski mask out like CJ GJ said. And all the enjoyment and all the excitement that came with this has been snatched and robbed away from me. Because I am still, a day later, sick and disgusted about how the Detroit Lions fumbled away that football game against the Seattle Seahawks. 37-31. Let me take this thing off. I'm not going to do the whole thing in this. Let's get this thing fully. There we go. Now we're ready to rock. Sorry. I couldn't wear that and still be in the right place. I'm probably going to be upset the whole video anyway. Why not? Because that's what the game felt like. 37-31 final score. The Detroit Lions coming up short against the Seattle Seahawks at home, and their home opener at Ford Field to one of the most electric crowds I've ever seen and ever heard at Ford Field. I've never heard a Lions fan base so loud than what I heard on Sunday. And it was all for nothing. It was all for nothing. All that energy, all that hype, all for nothing, because I'm still, a day later, furious with how the Detroit Lions ended that football game. No excuse for what happened. So many miscues, so many opportunities to put the Seahawks away. So many moments where they should have asserted themselves and looked like the better team. But they did nothing but disappoint. And so much blame to go around. I really want to hone in on one point specifically. I don't want to do a whole deep dive on every player and everything. That's, for a different time. But I think it's fair to place a lot of the blame to somebody who got a lot of credit before the season even started. And that's Dan Cambell. I feel like Dan Cambell deserves a whole lot of the blame, considering how much credit and love and admiration he was getting before the season even started. I want to be very clear on how I feel about this. I want to be very specific on what I'm saying. I have nothing against Dan Cambell. I think he can do a good job here. I want him to do a good job here. But I'm really getting disappointed and tired of these kind of mistakes being a constant, not just with Dan Cambell alone. There seems to be an issue with all Detroit Lions coaches. Bad clock management, the inability to adjust, common sense, like little adjustments here and there, quarter to quarter type things. And it seems like the Lions can't even get on the right page to make that happen. And seeing how this game went against the Seahawks, that's exactly what it felt like. I can't fathom the guy who's supposed to be the most gutsy coach in the NFL, one of the most brave coaches. That's because that's what he gets his credit for, being brave, which I love. I don't have anything against it. It makes sense in some spots. It can be stressful in some spots, but it makes sense here and there. But he struggles at playing smart sometimes. And it's not all the time, but when it is a problem, it's a glaring problem. We saw it last season. We saw bad clock management with the Eagles, bad clock management against the Seahawks last season, terrible clock management with a 10-point lead against the Minnesota Vikings last season, and now you're in a position here with the lead, and you fumble away your opportunity to either take the lead back or keep the lead. And I don't want to deep dive and kill the players. A lot of the momentum changed when things happened where it was either the David Montgomery fumble to open up the second half. That killed them. That turned a lot of the momentum. The Jared Goff pick six. I can live with all that. It's a little mistake. It happens. And the Lions have shown, dating back to just last week, that they can play through mistakes and still have themselves in a position to win the football game. Hasn't that been a part of the definition of SOL? The Lions being in position to actually win some games, but then finding ways to lose it? And that's exactly what they did against Seattle. Just dumb stuff. Again, this is supposed to be one of the bravest coaches in the NFL. And with a 4-point lead in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, you go for fourth down and short, where you're in midfield, you have a lead, one of the best punters in all of football, and one of the best home field advantages to keep the offense hopefully rattled to where they would have to drive 95 yards or longer because you would hopefully have that as your advantage. You couldn't even play for that. You decided to go for it. And of course, I was upset about how the play unraveled, but I don't even think you should have been going for it in that spot. I think the refs blew a call. It should have been a pass interference on that play, but why are you going for that call in that spot with the lead? It just seems like he was just doing everything backwards. They would be with the lead, and then they would start throwing more. Or they would be playing from behind and start running excessively and playing with no urgency. In the fourth quarter, they were down 2 scores. They were down 10 points. With 8 minutes left and the football, 3 timeouts. How are you shaving 5 minutes off the clock running the football, getting up to the line of scrimmage slow with no urgency, with no sense of understanding that this is a serious moment, that you're in threat of losing this football game? How do you not play with that kind of urgency? And I get it. It makes sense. Yes, you don't want to be able to leave Seattle with enough time to go down and score and get the ball back. Okay, I understand that. But then it works out in your favor because you score, and then you go down, give Seattle the ball back, sack Geno Smith, the only play you sacked him all game, the only time you hit the quarterback all game in the fourth quarter. Then you get the ball back, 1:41 left. 3 timeouts, you're at the 50-yard line after the punt. And you settle for a field goal? You don't even call your first timeout until like the 26-second mark of the game? You can't tell me that's good clock management. You can't tell me that's smart football in any way, shape, or form. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more than Dan Cambell or NFL players. But is that not elementary decision-making? Is that not an elementary, just common sense way of thinking? Because be clear again, they're not even looking like they had urgency. Jared Goff and that offense, the clock would be ticking under 4 minutes, under 5 minutes, under 3 minutes. And they're sitting up there walking up to the line of scrimmage like they're not down 2 scores. They're not even looking like they in a worry. And again, I can live with these kind of mistakes. But when you put yourself behind the gun and you're shooting yourself in the foot with these mistakes, this lack of preparation, and this bad decision-making as coaches, it hurts you in the long run. And we saw that with this game today. Or on Sunday, excuse me. We saw that in this game on Sunday. We saw Geno Smith have to make 0 adjustments. Pete Carroll made no adjustments offensively because the Lions got no pressure on Geno Smith, for one, and they didn't change their coverage, so they were just allowed to pick on Jerry Jacob for an entire game. It was disgusting. That was their game plan. Go at Jerry Jacob, hit a check down when you have to. That's all they had to do. It's the easiest thing I've ever seen for a guy as mediocre as Geno Smith. He didn't have an amazing game, but when you're not facing any pressure and adversity, it makes it pretty easy to look as damn good as he did. And now the Lions find themselves in trouble with bad coaching. Again, it's a bad loss. I'm not mad at them for losing, but I'm mad at how they found a way to lose this game. I can handle a loss, but they find themselves in too many situations where they're making dumb decisions, making bad coaching errors, turning the ball over at the worst possible times, and it cost them in the end in games like this. That's exactly what happened. Aaron Glenn made no adjustments in the second half with that defense. They played the same coverage all game. It was terrible. I don't understand what they were trying to do. And now, again, to add on to the bad situation that they're in, they now have injuries up and down the roster. David Montgomery, thigh bruise. Josh Pascal didn't suit up. Taylor Decker didn't play. Big V got hurt again. The only other competent right tackle or tackle period that you had. Penei Sewell had to jump the left tackle, and Big V played the right side. He did okay, but they're very thin at that position at this point. These injuries are added up bad. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like he was, shaking up a few times. He was cramping up. And then, of course, the biggest injury, the most mind-blowing injury to me, was James Houston. James Houston, who last season was the team's best pass rusher, arguably. We can debate if it was Hutch or Houston. I don't care which one you pick. The point is, he's arguably your best pass rusher. James Houston gets injured on a kickoff return. James Houston is your best edge rusher, and he's playing special teams? What sense does that make? Why in the world would he be lining up on a kickoff return when you need him to pressure the quarterback? Something you haven't done all season in these first 2 weeks. You didn't play Isaiah Buggs again. So you still were down some depth. Pascal was hurt. You were short. And you haven't had enough production on your defensive line. And your best edge rusher is playing special teams? You're dropping him back in coverage against, Kenneth Walker? What are we doing here? What? You can't tell me that makes no sense. I don't know what James Houston did, but I'm very confused with how they've handled him up to this point. Even going back to preseason. If you watch all the preseason games, I don't think anyone took more snaps than James Houston. And I don't understand that because they weren't running him in the natural technique where he succeeded last season as an edge rusher. He was getting this time as a linebacker where he's dropping back in coverage. And obviously, like we just said, playing special teams. Why? You need help on your defensive line, and you're not even using him. You played Charles Harris, who's starting over him, and he ain't doing nothing. He got no pressure on the quarterback. What? I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. And people might not like the revisionist history, but considering his injury at this point, it brings up a fair question, and it brings up a fair concern about how the Lions addressed the defensive line in the offseason. We don't want to rip on drafting Jahmyr Gibbs? Fine. You don't want me to bring up, we could have had Jalen Carter? Fine. You don't want to go in that direction? No problem. But maybe that conversation is easier to have if you would have added somebody to help complement Aiden Hutchinson on that line. You just brought back a bunch of guys from last season that are rotational players. Just a bunch of rotational guys. You didn't get one disruptor that could just make everything go to haywire for this defense. I love what they added in the secondary. I love who they added in the linebacking core. And I love the upside of Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil. These guys look like good players, but they're not Nick Bosa. They're not Aaron Donald. They need help around them. And you didn't give them anybody to take advantage of what you just put into your resources for your secondary. I love the guys that they just added. But be very clear, you're not going to get the best out of them if they don't have a D-line to help complement them. That's the problem. That's the problem. So we don't want to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. If you don't want to compare that and say, the Lions should have did this and have the revisionist history conversation, that's fine. But at the very least, we can say they didn't do anything. If you don't want to pin it to the draft, they didn't do anything that made sense in terms of addressing the D-line. Brad Holmes said, we don't follow anybody's mock draft. We follow our own. That's fine. But at a point like this is where it hurts to not address the most important unit on your defense. Maybe your whole team. You can't go into an NFL game with a lackluster defensive line, especially when you have a top 2 pick that has upside to being a top 10 dude. If you want him to live up to that, put the help around him necessary. You put all that money and resource into your secondary, put the help they need in front of them on the defensive line. You got a young linebacking core. Put a D-line in front of them that's going to create havoc. But they don't have that. And it terrifies me about what that means for when they play mobile quarterbacks. I hate Justin Fields, but I'm terrified of what he could do against this team that doesn't have any kind of game records on the D-line or enough discipline to keep those edge rushers or keep those quarterbacks in line from rushing up the middle or finding holes to gash your defense. We play Lamar Jackson in a few weeks. I'm worried. I'm a little worried about this defense. Again, not at the Lions as a whole, but I'm a little worried about the defense, and I'm a little worried about this coaching staff. I can't sit here and act like I'm not. This is something that we've seen too often. This is not anything new we've seen with Dan Cambell, and he deserves some blame for what happened on Sunday. I don't think that's too far. I'm not asking for his job. I'm not saying any further punishment needs to happen. But is the concern reasonable from Lions fans? I 100% believe so. I believe you should be concerned, and I believe you have every right to be concerned about what you just saw on Sunday. But talk to me in the comments. I would love to hear from you. What was your reaction from what you saw from the Lions on Sunday? Did it feel like a SOL type game to you? Because it for damn sure did to me. I want to hear from you. Talk to me in the comment section. Like the video. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel. Show us some love so we can get some more content going your way and grow our audience together. We'd love to make that happen for you. Appreciate you being here. Top Title Sports. Again, thank you so much for your love. I'll see you again soon on the next video. Peace.